Welcome to the Mortgage Broker Podcast, tailor-made for Canadian mortgage industry professionals. Proudly presented by a Better Way Mortgage Group, this podcast is your trusted source for insider insights, market updates, and strategies to elevate your career in the ever-evolving world of mortgage brokering. Whether you're a seasoned broker with a Better Way Mortgage Group or an industry enthusiast looking to stay ahead, our episodes are designed to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the Canadian mortgage space. All right, we're back for another episode of the Mortgage Broker Podcast, and today we're going to get into the future of tech in mortgage brokering. We have Tom Hall, our guest today, really just going to jump into innovation, efficiency, and trying to find the competitive edge. So Tom, thank you for joining us, and maybe a little bit of introduction to yourself and a background. Yeah.
Well, of course, Dean, me and you go way back, but yeah, for the audience, my name's Tom. I'm one of the co-founders of Blu Mortgage CRM. So yeah, we've been around. We technically actually launched in 2018, so it's almost been about 7 years now, which is crazy to me. Really kind of took off during the pandemic, really just helping brokers across the nation follow up with clients, sure, but integrate their data, build processes, that sort of thing. There's obviously a ton of stuff that goes into that. There's 1,000 things in between, and we kind of touch all of that. So, now we're serving thousands of people across the country, and like you said, always trying to find that competitive edge, right?
Which is difficult, and it's hard. I mean, especially for somebody like myself, it's hard to keep up, right? Like there's so much going on in technology in general, let alone the mortgage space. And I found like just with my journey through the mortgage industry, like the U.S. side has been definitely ahead of us in a lot of ways. Totally. But after speaking to somebody in the tech side in the mortgage space, yes, they've been ahead of us in the mortgage space, but for whatever reason, they've been slower turnaround times on how to process a deal. So,
sure. Yeah.
But okay, so maybe just jumping in, like the evolution of the mortgage technology in our space. Maybe we can kind of just touch on that. Like, what are some of the biggest, let's say, tech advancements that you've seen or that have shaped the mortgage industry so far?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? You probably seen it a bit closer from your perspective, but for us, we kind of came in, we think, right around an interesting time. I mean, up until that 2018 time, it was kind of just like Fiologics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me, right? But
totally, yeah.
Something happened around that time. I think it was just, like all these things, a bunch of stuff happening at once.
Yeah.
Right. So basically what was it? It was, Fiologics, but Velocity was kind of coming onto the scene. There were other startups, kind of the Finmo, Lendesk types also poking their head up. And I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg, what caused what, but I think also at the same time, a lot of these platforms, including Fiologics, said, okay, we got to open up a bit.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of just being, the closed system, we do everything here, starting to recognize. And I think also the other thing happening, not just in the mortgage industry outside of it, is that there was a big proliferation of new tools. Right. And maybe we'd fall into that category of CRMs. And so we had all these things happen at once where, I think in 2018, whatever you say, it's primarily Fiologics to now fast forward today where there's a lot of other platforms like Fiologics. But I think more interestingly, and maybe in my world, we're also seeing a lot of these kind of, I call them like value add tools, like a CRM, right? Where maybe it wouldn't have been as easy or as possible 6-7 years ago, but with opening up things from a API data connection perspective, just from like the ease of developing new tools, it's allowed for this proliferation, which is exciting for us, of course. We love seeing new tools. Being a techie, geeky guy myself, I'm always excited about that. But, I also think on the other side of it, it's almost also caused, I don't know if, panic is the right word, not panic, just like an overwhelming sense for some of these brokers where it's like, 10 years ago, the decision was easy for tech, right? Now, what should I be using? What am I not using? What's my guy down the hall using and I'm not, and am I falling behind? And there's a little bit of that dynamic, I think, which is interesting, right? Where more choice is good, but it also creates new problems, right?
Totally. I mean, and like Fiologics for so long was the only option. They had no real reason to innovate because there was no competition, right? And would you say some of the reason for the advancement so far has been because there's competition now? When you talk about Velocity, Finmo, Scarlet, these are all competitors that are pushing the things forward. Or what do you think it is that's driving so much change all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think that, like all these things, you can't attribute it to just one, but the competitive pressure helps, right? I think that, I always say like necessity is the mother of all innovation, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot. No, there are, people who get out there and get excited and want to build cool things, but I think that really where you see a lot of innovation happens is when there's, very stressful and even maybe constrained, environment, you could call it, right? Like you look back to, I don't know, a silly example, but like, wartime, World War II, and you look back at the amount of innovation that happened during that time, it's just exploded, right? It goes off the charts. And so I think that, there was that, right? Where Filologic started looking around and saying the strategy that's worked for however many years, it's not going to work in the next 5 years. We need to pivot. But then I think I think you're right in that sense, but I think that was then just the first domino.
Yeah.
Right? That was the domino. And for the nature of the industry and I think everything else, there was just a ton of other dominoes just waiting there, waiting to be knocked over, right? And, what are some of those things? Well, people, because things started opening up, because there started being more tools, people started building software businesses like us that were seeing a lot of success, right? And so then people looked at that success and said, well, I want to replicate it, right?
Yeah.
And so then, there was all these knock-on effects from that first domino that fell over.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, well said. I mean, that's a good point. Like looking at the digital tools that are available in our space right now, what do you think has been the biggest impact that's changed the way brokers interact with clients and lenders?
Yeah, I think the answer really depends on the type of broker. Right? You know what I mean? Like, I think, we worked with you back in the Thrive days, and you guys were like, big team, but it's, more than anything, not even the team as much as you guys were big process people.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just, and you can probably speak to that better than I can, how you guys thought about process. But in my experience with you and other brokers like you, it was just process. And every single step along the way, there was an operating principle, and we'd follow that principle very closely. And so what I'd say for those types of teams, the CRMs and the stuff that we deal with, we're just game changers, right? In the sense that you could take these operating principles that were maybe on a doc somewhere or maybe in your head or whatever it was, but those existed, and instead outsource that to a computer, right? So, hey, these are the things I do over and over and over again. I want to stop doing these mundane things over and over again. So let's define that principle and then get software to come in and really, do that for us. So I think that was really interesting. But then, I think, the other side of it too, though, is, and this is where my head's been a lot right now, is that there's also the other, I think, broker out there, and, both are good. It's not that one's better than the other, but I'll use, like, I have my mother-in-law, she's a broker, and she does, she's just more relationship based, right? She has her circle, she has her thing, and she runs her whole business on like her inbox and Excel, right? Like pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is where my head's at is to say, and I don't know if we found it yet, so I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, of what's the tech for that person?
Yeah, that's
right?
a good point, actually.
Right? So I think that for those people, the Thrives and that, the CRMs have been great, the Calendlies have been great. Anybody who wants to say, I want to outsource my process to a machine, there's been a huge explosion. I think those are great things. But, and I don't know if you have an opinion on this, is, what's the right thing for, if she's watching this, I apologize, but my mother-in-law who's doing that, is it to say, you need to start building processes and get on a CRM? Or is it to turn around and say, well, you have a different type of business. What's the right tech for you?
I mean, I think it's kind of the beauty of the mortgage broker business is you can there's so many different ways to do this and build your business and operate. And,
do you see those two different types? Like,
absolutely. For sure we do.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, it's what do you enjoy doing best?
Sure.
And, somebody like that you're mentioning, it's not, like you said, they're relationship based.
Yeah.
They're probably really good at building relationships, maintaining relationships, delivering a good client service because they're always available verbally. Those are things that are making them really good at what they do. So if they could do more of that and less of the other things, they would have a lot more success, but they would also actually probably enjoy their days more because that individual probably does not enjoy, typing data into the spreadsheet or Filologic's Velocity, whatever they're using.
Right.
So if you could
collecting
automate
docs, right? Yeah.
So if you could automate those things through the CRM or whatnot, then you can spend more time doing, what you like to do. And I want to get into like AI and which we'll touch on here today, but
Sure.
like, I mean, I think that's kind of one of those questions I was going to ask. It's an open-ended question, but like, are there any outdated processes that, you think will be completely replaced in the next few years? I mean, I definitely have my ideas on this.
Yeah, you have some there. Yeah, I think it's I think it's a good question, right? And it's to say, yeah, no matter, if you're that process-driven person or if you're that more relationship-based broker, what are the processes right now that, let's just say a CRM, just because that's the world I'm in, or, even a Velocity hasn't replaced yet, right? And, there's always going to be that side of it, which is just building relationships, which I don't think will ever go away. Now, the nature of that might change. You have to then look and say, okay, but then what are the other parts of the day that maybe could be, right? Where are those other pain points, so to speak? I think that it's an important thing as we get into AI, and I'm sure we'll go down that rabbit hole in this episode, is it's very tempting to, look at a cool ChatGPT presentation or, video that you see online and see, hey, ChatGPT can make a cool picture for me or can write a song for me. But, you have to kind of take a step back and say, how is that helping my business actually, right? And
Completely.
Right.
I mean, we just walked out of a presentation on just that, and it's like, for me, like a couple things. Like one thing we've definitely seen technology replace so far is the ability to fill out a mortgage application, and the client can do it on their own versus, taking it over the phone or meeting that person in person. Great. The ability to request documents automatically and not have to,
the smart docs, right?
Receive an app and then, write an email out, hey, we need these, and these. Yeah. Like those two pieces. I mean, we eliminated that years ago when we started working with, even before we started working with you, with some of the technology was slowly coming out at that time. But now going forward, it's like, what is the pain point? Well, I truly think like one of the biggest time sucks in our business is the follow-up for documents, the processing of documents. Hey, is this the right T4? Oh, no, it's 2022. Oh, this bank statement's missing their name. This is actually November 2023, not November 2024, so on and so forth, right? Though that's kind of where I see a huge pain point. And back to the whole AI piece, I don't need an AI to write me a blog. It would help. I mean, it would help. But what I really need is to find more time for, doing the things I want to do in my business that I enjoy doing, or spending more time with my family or what have you, right? So, before we jump into AI, maybe we can just jump into some like must-have tools, tech tools for mortgage brokers. And, like what would be the core technologies that, every broker should have?
Right off the top, okay, fine, let's take inbox, things that, is tech, right? And I don't want to, minimize that, but that's almost table stakes, right? And maybe we'll circle back to that because, I think tech like that is coming that'll soon be table stakes, right? That we don't even think is tech, but it is. But it's just, we don't think it that way because it's just part of our process. But putting that aside, kind of that next level of tech is, okay, maybe the deal submission platform. And again, everybody's using that, so let's put that aside. And so then you get into those value add type things. And, the first place I think most people go is that digital application. And I think, you probably get it. I get it all the time of people just saying, hey, I want to I don't want to do the digital application, right? I want to be able to, that's part of my process. That's part of the touch that I bring, which is sitting across the table from someone and having that conversation. But what I say is like, okay, but do it, go across the table from someone, but have the digital app right there because you are going to you might not ask everything. It might be able to pop up things that you should be asking about, right?
Yeah.
And then once it's complete, it's one click and you're off to the next step, right? You're not doing the thing of going then back to Filogics or wherever and typing in all that information, right? So that's usually the first place I go. And then after that, not to talk my own book too much, is just, there is the CRM side of things. And I think the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit, which every CRM does, is just send like a happy birthday email or just something. Like we, again, just came from a presentation, I guess it was 2 ago, where a lender got on stage and said, and, the moderator was kind of giving the lender a hard time of like, you're scooping up our business on renewal. What the heck?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, I guess maybe, but 75% of the borrowers that I talk to, I've never heard from their broker. Yeah. It's like, right?
Which is crazy, right? Yeah. And back to relationships, if you stayed in touch with them, they'd actually remember. I made this comment multiple times. Like, I live on property, I buy firewood, every year, maybe at the most,
Sure.
right? Every 18 months. I had a great experience with my last guy.
Yeah.
I didn't remember his phone number. I've never heard from him. I'd love to call him and get some more firewood, but ultimately he's,
That's hilarious.
I don't know where he is. So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of it's a similar example to, some people might really, really enjoy the experience they had with the broker. Everything's great, but if they got a new phone or what have you and they never heard from them.
They don't remember your name.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah. Yeah. I always say that, even if they do remember your name, one click reply is easier than, what was it was a Dean what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they call a different Dean or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or they just, they're, not in their inbox and they get distracted and they go do another thing. Like it is just staying top of mind. And, I think that's the lowest hanging fruit with the CRM. A lot of what I spend my day thinking about too, though, is that how do you get, the most out of these types of systems, because, they can be tough to implement, right? I'm not going to be kind of coming up here and saying, these systems are easy and you just, click it in and it's going to, change your world overnight. It does require work at the very least to come in and make sure that, the emails or these communications that are being sent out are what you want. And so what I always say to anyone is, start with that lowest hanging fruit, because what you're going to see when you do that, spend the whatever time it takes just to get maybe that happy birthday email out. But that's going to start running. And then you're going to start getting those replies back.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to be like, holy crap, there was actually this reply that this email I didn't even realize that I sent out. Okay, this thing's kind of cool. What's the next thing?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed. They go to a presentation that maybe I'll give and say, here are the 10 things you need to be doing in a CRM. Or they look at a CRM like yours and they see how dialed in you are. And you're like, I want to get there.
Yeah.
But how you get there is one step at a time. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and it just, the confusion or the overwhelming feeling of even just launching a CRM, if you've, you're that example of having a spreadsheet, it is overwhelming. And a lot of folks kind of look to me at some points and say, I just want what you have.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what we have is built to a process that we built the tech for, right? And it's
you guys took 5 years to build that out.
Yeah, and to just replicate that for the other broker, it probably doesn't make sense, because our system had, maybe 2 other employees that were touching the file at different points. And, a task is going to the AMA named Mary. Well,
you don't have a Mary.
Yeah, exactly.
Mary doesn't work for you.
So there's so many things there, but what would you say is the easiest way for a broker that has that, let's just say that person with the spreadsheet, or maybe they have a CRM and it's just not being used.
Yeah.
What is the easiest way, or what is the best advice for somebody to just get started and actually use it?
I think it's definitely one of those things where it's like, if you just take that time to do the first thing and get that positive feedback loop, because it goes both ways, right? You get something in place, you get some responses, you get some time back in your day, you're excited to do the next thing. So it's just pushing that snowball. And I promise you it's going to start rolling. But how do you actually push that snowball? That's the thing that I think, software will never solve. It's almost like a mindset thing, right? Or it's almost like a business thing, right? The software always comes after you realize, hey, I need this for my business, or I'm going to change my process, I'm going to do that. And so, I think before you even jump into a CRM, it's about taking a step back and saying, what are my goals for my business?
Yeah.
Right? Where do I want to achieve? How am I going to hold myself accountable? How am I going to maybe join an accountability group that's going to make sure that I'm doing these types of things? Because a software is never going to push the snowball. It's going to help, it grow as it goes down the hill. But that initial push needs to come from you and, the way you want to run your business. And, those are tough things. But there are tactics like, just setting simple goals for yourself, or having an accountability partner, or, you probably have a bigger list than I do, but the business side always has to come first, and then the software comes second.
Well, I think for For a lot of folks that I talk to, and it's a lot, that struggle with using a CRM regularly or even getting started to set one up. But what I'm noticing now is most people actually have something. It's just not even being used, right? So it's like, hey, you know, they set it up with yourself and they have a Blue account, or they have something else with some, you know, whatever.
Gold Rush or whatever.
Yeah. And it's just they're not using it, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by using it is more so from like a deal processing perspective.
Yeah.
Like a lot of folks, they get introduced to a client. Like for us, our process, and we talked about this in the perfect loan process at length. Like for us, as soon as I got notified that somebody needs my attention, and it typically, are, you know, a lot of our referrals came from realtors or other referral partners. It was like, hey, you know, Dean, call this guy. Yeah. And it's like their phone number, and you know, maybe it's like he's looking to purchase a townhouse or whatever. Usually it wasn't even that.
Quick note or something.
Yeah. That was an immediate lead form.
Yeah.
And the lead form would then populate the CRM. And then now we were off to the races. It's like the first start is getting into the CRM, where a lot of folks are like, you know, they write it down. Yeah. And then what, right? Like,
and then they get busy.
Well, it's like, hey, you know how many leads we reach out to, they don't respond. Yeah. And well, I still put it into the CRM no matter what, as I, you know, lead received, you know,
you never hear from them.
No response. Yeah. But now they're in the system, you know, back to the CRM. They're getting the emails. They're getting, you know, maybe not the birthday because they don't have his birthday, but they're getting something, right? Yeah. And then they'll like the amount of on hold or cold leads that have popped up even 3 years later.
Oh yeah, 3 years.
Because they're getting the hits on the CRM, and but more so, I put them into the CRM right away. So I think my biggest tip is like have something that is part of your immediate first action.
Right. Yeah. It's like. Yeah, it's okay. I put it into my phone maybe, and then you're also doing this, right? Yeah. It's just, you know, I think it's like the Atomic Habits. I think James Clear he came to one of the DLC events a couple of years ago. He talks about like the habit stacking.
Totally.
Right? Where it's like, every time I get a new lead, I always do this, right? I always put them into my phone, or I always, I don't know, I always shoot off that email, or I always thank the realtor. It's like, just say in your head, okay, if I do this first step, I always follow it with that, right? Well, like he uses the examples like, if you want to, I don't know, do push-ups, do it when you're brushing your teeth. Yeah. Because you're always going to brush your teeth. And so that's the trigger to actually. Yeah,
it's a really good point. I mean, I've read that book multiple times, and it's kind of like where I was going to go is like, you know, the balance between automation and personal touch. Well, like again, back to my point, if you start with that lead and put it into the system, now it's in Blue. There's an automatic task to thank the refer. Yeah, right. There's an automatic or an email that goes out to the refer if you know if your form intakes of the realtor's information. But at the very least, there's a task to keep you accountable to do the next steps. Right. And it's a workflow. Right. It's like, what do you want to happen after you get a lead? Thank the refer. You know, follow up with them in 2 days or follow up the next day. Yeah. Like. Is the first habit is just putting it into the system, and then the rest can remind you or take care of it. And back to automation, you know, this is where we can kind of get into the balance of automation and personal touch. So, you know, what I'm referring to is like automation to remind you to do those things. The next level of automation is actually doing those things. And, you know, where have you seen kind of the balance there? Because I've definitely seen a balance, and we've turned things back.
Yeah, you dial it back, right?
When it comes to automated communication.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think it completely depends on the type of business that you run, right? At the end of the day, first of all. You're never going to find that out unless you try, right? I think that, and I say always, you know, start simple, right? If you are coming into the CRM, maybe, you never ever even have the system sending out an auto email. Not once, right? Fine. We have a lot of clients who do that, and whatever, then they're able to handle that, and that's great for them, and we have no opinion there. But to that person, I would say just start dialing it up, right? And maybe the next stage is you don't get a task to call the person or to email the person. The next step is then to say, hey, an email's going out in 2 hours. Are you cool with this? Yeah. Right? Yep. And so then that's the next dial. And then the third dial, okay, maybe it's automatically sending it out, right? And you have these kind of dial it up. You never know where your limits exist until you try. Yeah. And I don't know your opinion on this, but maybe I'm a bit biased. But I don't know if, you know, anyone's really lost a deal for sending an auto email that might have been the wrong auto email, right? Like sending out a happy birthday when actually maybe it's the wrong data, or maybe you just talked to the person yesterday. no one's lost a deal because of that.
You know what?
Right?
It's so true. I've never actually looked at it that way, but I think about it a lot. And the only time I've ever had a complaint about automated communication was a happy birthday to somebody that was actually no longer living.
Oh no!
and a child received that text. So.
No. Yeah.
So, but that's a whole nother issue. That's back to, I did a poor job, or my team did a poor job of staying in touch with our clients. And this is back to like the director of WOW position, not the title I like for that role, but
I know what I've heard of that. Yeah.
What people would probably most be familiar with when I say that is that, we should have been reaching out to our clients, or for whatever reason we missed that. We are hard on ourselves when it comes to that stuff. But now it's like, that was a learning lesson. Yeah. We have a deceased field in the CRM that we added. Right. And
being a bit agile with that.
And you know what, people, it's life, right? And when those things happen, well, when we're notified of it, when that goes from living to deceased, that's an
automations click off.
Well, automations click off, but there's also another automated task is like maybe send flowers. Or,
amazing, right?
Or what can we do to have a personal touch? Totally. And so I think that is the balance between automation and personal touch, is finding the opportunities in these things, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. And just a real quick on that is, I think a lot of people, especially when they get scared, they think about the cost of the action. Right? Okay, the cost of action of sending out that text. Okay, there was a bit of a cost to that in that particular situation. But I think what we do a bad job at, and I think we need to, is what's the cost of inaction?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And yes, there was one bad happy birthday, but there was 100 other that were great that you might have lost a deal out if you didn't send that auto text, right? Yeah. And that goes back to, that starts the snowball, right? Of saying, I'm going to take risks because I know there's a cost to inaction, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's like, we talk about that all the time, is like the opportunity loss, right? When, and
it's so hard to quantify, right?
Yeah,
you have to have that faith, I guess, almost in the process in your business, which is like, I just know that if I don't do this, it's going to hurt me. Hurt my business, right?
And like you mentioned the word gold rush, it's like so highly talked about in our world of DLCG, for good reason and for bad. But it's funny, like, I was just at a DLCG conference, and the speaker, I'm not going to name names, but they brought up gold rush, and they said, hey, you know what? I know a lot of you are probably sitting here thinking like, not this again, and other things that are repeated at these events over and over again when it comes to MPP or so on and so forth. But the reality is, and what the speaker said, is that 75% of this room still haven't implemented it.
Yeah, that's right.
So, So like maybe listen to it and maybe take it away and maybe implement it. And it's like, it's not gold rush, it's not whatever. It's just, if there's something in our industry that's continuing to be repeated, it's for a reason, right?
Yeah, and you go and you do this and you realize it's not for you. Okay, just turn it off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you make it, you don't want it to seem like this big, scary thing. And that's why I say, just start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with the simplest things. Just get it out so there's not this huge investment of your time and money. But just start it and try it on for size, right?
Totally.
Like
And it just like, I've had a couple brokers reach out to me, and they've gone through Blu, and they've set up and turned things on, and I say, hey, add me into your CRM, let me as a client, let me see what you're sending, right? And then I did the same thing for a broker with Gold Rush, and I found like those are people I didn't have a deep relationship with, and now I have a very good relationship with.
That's hilarious.
It's like they're top of mind for me. I was like, wow, this is like, I put myself on here just to see the content because I was curious, and now I'm like, I have a much deeper relationship with these folks. So it does work. It definitely works. We are so excited to bring our very successful private lender speed dating session to Ontario. We are looking forward to continuing the success of our event over 10 years running in BC. These are fast-paced, productive events that allow brokers to have the chance to connect with top private lenders in a very fast-paced setting. Best of all, this is free to all mortgage brokers. The event is taking place on Wednesday, May 14th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time at the Hazelton Manor in Concord, Ontario. There is an optional lunch and networking available to everyone that's attending, which will start at the end of the event from 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. We expect approximately 90 to 100 brokers attending this event, so capacity is limited. Our last event in BC sold out in just 2 days, so definitely make sure to act quick and secure your spot. Refreshments will be made available throughout the event. Coffee, tea, light refreshments, again, available throughout with the full lunch provided at the end. This cost is free for all brokers, and the participating lenders that you can expect to meet are PHL Capital, Stone Ridge Lending, Glass Lake, 3 Point Capital, Westboro, VWR, Fiskard, Fraction, Vault, and Alta West. So again, reserve your spot quick. This event and capacity will not last long. Look forward to seeing you all there. Okay, before we move on to the AI piece, and we won't go too deep there, we'll keep it surface level, but before we move on to that, I just wanted to ask, are there any underrated or emerging tools that brokers should be paying more attention to?
We're about to go down the AI rabbit hole, so to speak. And I think in my mind, in terms of AI tools, it's a lot of, for me right now, I'm in the wait and see mode. But I think the underrated thing, and we talked about this last time we chatted, was using ChatGPT, that AI interface, just as a brainstorm partner, right? I think it's crazy for me. Like yesterday we were building some technical stuff and I didn't really know what the right tool was or how to do it. So it's not the same field, but bear with me for a sec. And I had two options. I basically could go, I have a guy who's an expert in the field. I pay him $500 an hour and he'd give me a great response. But instead I just went over to ChatGPT, asked the questions, and it's just there, right? And so they have the technical knowledge, but also they can brainstorm, right? If you have a tricky file or something like that, just saying, yeah, but this and that, and I can't put them here because of that. And, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to really challenge your thinking. And I just think that's so cool and totally underrated in any business practice. It doesn't have to be.
That's such a good point. Yeah. Again, we just came from a pretty deep, well, not deep, but long AI presentation. The one thing, like you just mentioned, is the brainstorming. Is that's what I do, and I've been doing that for over a year now with ChatGPT, and I'm playing around with all of them, pretty much on all of them. And I I have the same, I have these conversations, I flush ideas out. But what it's done is it's actually helped me learn the system as I'm talking through things. I'm like, oh wow, I could ask it to do this, or it's like, oh, now I have my prompt, right? And even totally. My prompts were so basic and not getting me stuff, but as I worked through conversations in a brainstorming perspective, it changed everything, and now I have very dialed prompts that are helping me immensely.
Simple example, absolutely the same. It's the prompts, but it's also understanding what to get, right? This isn't like a person who honestly has the best information, right? I've had many times where I'd have a conversation and I'd be like to a human, it's like, no, you're wrong. It's this and this. And then they go, oh yeah. Right. And it's kind of scary in that sense, because it's almost very human-like.
Totally.
It makes sense because it's trained on human language.
And actually, that's a really good point. I want to stop you there, because it is wrong. Right. It's not always, you can't expect it to be 100% correct. And so to challenge it is important.
It's not Google, right? It's not, not that Google's right all the time, but it's not, this tool to get knowledge. It's actually a tool to, as the name suggests, have a chat with, have a conversation with, and go have that back and forth. And that's where the real power lies, I think.
Completely. We're already there. This is the hottest topic in mortgage tech. It's really the hottest topic in probably the world right now is AI. Where do you see it providing the biggest value to brokers today? Not necessarily in the future, but right now with its capacity and what it can do. Today,
I'd say that, we talk about these presentations that we see that they'll go on stage and show an AI that can write a song for you. And I think that's great. It's cool. But, I don't think that's the biggest problem brokers are facing, their lack of songwriting capability. Right? It's not that. Today I think it's the simple stuff. It's saying, we do little things in our CRM, not that this is the biggest lift of, hey, write this email, and then within it there's, hey, click a button, make this a bit more concise, make this a little bit more friendly. Hey, this is a tough email. How do I come across as professional, but also getting to the point, right? So there's those types of wins. I was on stage just a couple months ago with Dong Lee and a couple folks from Filogix, and same question, and they kind of said the same thing. It's these emails thing. They talked about deal summaries as being a cool thing, right? So, or a very applicable thing. Taking a look at all the data in the deal and writing that draft that you might send to a lender of, hey, this is Tom and this is his income situation and this is that. And then you can go in and make your tweaks. But it's the ChatGPT wrappers today, at least, right? And what I mean by wrapper is, well, ChatGPT is the candy in the middle and the wrapper is what goes around it. And that's, what then gets embedded in Filogix or Blu or whatever, right? So I think that's where we're at today, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, things are moving so quick that this could get dated quickly too. The one, I mean, a couple tips that I found very useful when it comes to ChatGPT in the business. The first piece, like what you mentioned, is just improving the way you're writing emails, and especially for somebody that maybe English is not their first language, it can be very helpful to articulate what you're trying to say without sounding or like a prick or like, and that happens, right? Like a lot of things get misconstrued in text. A lot gets
lost in email. Yeah, absolutely.
And email, the form of email is not meant for a back and forth lengthy conversation. And so ChatGPT can really help you with that, or Gemini on, if you're a Google user, it's right there. It's you're in Gmail, it can help. So
just click.
That one piece I think is I can't, like, I'd be shocked if like I'm just shocked that not everyone's using that, because that's such a basic form of its limitation or of its capacity. Sorry, but the other piece that I wanted to touch on is that I found very useful, and like this is very important to understand from a privacy perspective, but. I was doing my own mortgage, and I was trying to play around with, and I haven't underwritten a deal in 2 years. So I was
shaking off the rust a bit.
And I was thinking, okay, like I know this deal works at Scotiabank. What would it look like? I was just curious if I, took a bank statement approach and went to Equitable Bank as an example. And I said, well, I have my bank statements here for my business. I'm going to throw them into ChatGPT. I threw 12 bank statements into ChatGPT for the 12 past months. I prompted it to, give me my gross deposits, total withdrawals, and then any trends that it saw. Wow. And it spit out a very perfect spreadsheet. Perfect. And then I took, what's left, like give me 70% and I started playing around with it. And holy smokes, it was very powerful. And that task alone would take a long time to analyze those statements. And the reason why I say it's important from a privacy perspective is like, that's where we don't really know from a regulatory perspective. You can't just throw a client's bank statements into some server, which who knows where it's going, but there's ways to, take the data, remove names, remove account numbers, and still, achieve something similar. So that's one I would say from a trial perspective. That's something you can have fun with, just with your own stuff. Right? Yeah. And again, going through that process, it was like, okay, it spat out a summary, but then, hey, make this a very detailed spreadsheet, and then, and then beyond. So, but I mean, I'm sure this is where you're about to take me, but where I get excited when I hear that is, okay, privacy piece aside, because obviously that's important, but how do you then take, and this is just a cool tech question, is how do you take that output, which is just my bank statement, it's just some stuff, but then feed that into a lender spotlight type thing, which is like this, and then what product works with this? Totally. Right. And I think, there's different people trying to do something like that out there. We know different folks doing that, but that's the exciting thing. And I don't think it's there yet. But that's where I start to get excited, where it's, okay, there's taking this very interesting tool, which is ChatGPT, but then applying it to very specific situations, like Canadian mortgages. And I know what people are thinking listening to this immediately when I started explaining this option with bank statements is like, holy smokes, it's going to replace us. And what? The reality is it probably is going to replace the folks that aren't using it. Sure. And back to, your mother-in-law, not to pick on her, but because she's... Hope she doesn't watch this. Oh, man, But because she's so good with client relations and just building relationships, these are tools that are going to empower her to only do that. And to be honest, the people like that have that skill of just being likable and being able to develop really strong relationships, those are the people that are going to win, because that skill, in reality, it just really can't be taught. No. You either have it or you don't. I mean, for sure, you can work, on it if you're struggling in that area, but that is what's going to win is people that are really good at connecting with people, because all of this AI stuff, where it's going to get to is it's, you're never going to know who you're talking to, whether it's a chatbot, somebody on the phone, or even a Zoom call. That's how good AI is getting. You're not even going to know if you're speaking to a human or not. And so I see the world going towards, again, I'm a much bigger vision thinker, but I do see the world going to a point where we actually get back to more face-to-face stuff.
I was just going to say that, like this right here, right?
Because that's
it's
what
going to be
want.
so many like deep fakes even.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know if I'm talking to, if it's on Zoom, I don't even know if I'm talking to Dean right now.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen those Joe Rogan clips that aren't even him, but it sounds just like it looks just like him. Right?
Like insane, right? Yeah.
And so if you have these tools to do that, it will free up the time to do the behind the desk. And everyone says, I don't have time to meet my clients. It's like, I get
you
it.
will now.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
But I do think we will.
Well, we will, because then the point becomes like the AI assistant, and I think that's a good way to think of it. It's like maybe some people listening have assistants, but that's what it'll act like, I should say, where they'll go out and they'll ask the questions and they'll do this and they'll say, that's interesting. I got to double check with Dean on this, but I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Right? It's that exact interaction.
Totally.
And in that interaction, for anybody who has an assistant, knows that the assistant hasn't taken their job, hasn't made them obsolete. It's just taking those things off their plate that they don't want to deal with. It's almost exactly the same, right?
And when we were talking about pain points, like we talked about this, I mean, you and I talk about this a lot, is the biggest pain point is going and collecting documents, processing documents, making sure it's the right one, filing it, right? So that's where I see AI supporting us going forward. And those are the jobs that we're probably going to eliminate, right?
Sure.
The person that follows up her docs and checks if they're the right ones.
This is a pay stub, not a
T4. Titles it.
Yeah. Boom.
Updates the app with the information. That's where we're going to get to. And again, back to having a really good skill set of being able to connect with humans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, to that point a little bit, and where I get excited is, bringing it all back. I kind of started the conversation talking about email and kind of taking that offline. And then we talked about CRMs and different things like that. I think, I see email as something that's just absolutely essential. Like if you're not using email, you're just not competitive.
Yeah.
Right? Like, come on, right? So and that sounds funny to say right now, but it's true. Like if you're just faxing, I don't know. So let's say that. If you're not using a CRM, you're definitely less efficient. Like, I'm going to, again, talk my own book. Like there's obviously huge benefits come with CRM, but you're still competitive.
Yeah.
Right? There is still a place in the market for you, and I'm not going to deny that. I think there's huge lifts and huge efficiency gains to go with CRM, but in this scenario, and we're kind of, fast forwarding many years, I think that AI agent that we just described is like an email, right? Where it's like, if you're not using this, people are going to laugh at that in 20 years, maybe, right? People are going to say, "Wait, you collect docs manually yourself?" Right?
Yeah.
It'd be laughable. It'd be like us talking about fax right now.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's where we, you get into the future and where things might be going, but the trend lines seem to be pointing that way.
Totally. And I mean, that's one thing I'll touch on is like you and I have been discussing putting together a mastermind for AI, for, the mortgage broker space. It's something where it will be a small group. And our goal is to really start to, flesh these out and, get ideas and make it more of a think tank to hopefully develop some of these things. 'Cause at the end of the day, we just like us as mortgage brokers just want the tools.
No, right? Yeah.
So whoever can make them or however it has to happen, like it will take a team and a tribe to put these things together, and then somebody just has to run with the actual build.
Absolutely. And it's the same point a little bit, which is with the email, which is like 20 years ago in 1995 when email just came up. You had to know servers, and you had to set up a server with a port. And then you have to do SMTP protocols and all these things I don't even understand. Today, you go into Gmail, you type in your name, and you have an inbox.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, the point is for anybody watching who's getting overwhelmed or thinking about these types of things, I think that's going to be the same experience. You go to whatever, chatgpt.com, you type in your name, and you have a docs assistant right there. Yeah. And so really, I think for anybody thinking is just stay curious, right?
Yeah.
Stay on top of those things because when the changes come, they're going to be easy to implement, but it's really going to reward the first movers.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be those people who have their ear to the ground, who can implement that right away. They're going to be able to start eating up a lot of market share before that next person is even lifting their head up and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean that's one piece. Like we're taking it very seriously. We're always looking at the bigger picture, right? More than just what's happening today. It's what's happening 5-10 years from now. And for us, like, we will get to a point where whatever we develop, it will be just turnkey and implemented for our brokers immediately.
Yeah.
And I mean that, and if you're a mortgage broker, that's what you should be looking for, is somebody that, a team of people that are innovative and are willing to help you and be ahead of it. And again, not overwhelm you and make it easy, seamless, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Maybe just to kind of look to round this out, challenges and adoption barriers, like to go a little bit more, to explain that a little bit further. Many brokers hesitate, right? What are the biggest barriers you've seen?
Like, this is a very common scenario that I see, which is, let's talk about tech, my world, more CRMs, where, it is a big lift, right, to maybe get a CRM set up. And there's a million different ways that looks. And I think that's really any tech across the board. So, let's just say I'm going to throw out numbers. You need to put in 20 hours to get your CRM really where you need to be dialed. It's probably going to be less, but let's just use that for argument's sake. What I see as a very common experience is someone signs up for the CRM, they get fired up, they put in 3, 4, 5 hours, let's call it. Next week, they come back, they put another 5 hours, so okay, they're at 10. And then life gets busy. Files come across their desk. It's a busy month. And they've put in that 10, but they haven't put in the 20. And so then they come back around 2 months later and they're like, this thing that I just paid for that I was excited about, it's not where it needs to be. I'm just going to cancel and I'm going to get mad at the tech, right? And maybe rightfully so. I think as a tech leader, it's our job to take that 20 and make it as small as possible.
Yeah.
But I think that's really the trick, where it's, these types of systems, they have a high activation rate or high activation energy for, people who, I was an engineer and that's a chemical reaction thing, right? But, you need enough. It's like going over a hill. You need enough to get to the peak and then it's a big downslide. But if you're only getting halfway here and you're not getting to the peak and to the other side, you're just constantly in this loop of going up and down, up and down. And that's incredibly frustrating, right? And so I think one is recognizing that that's a paradigm that exists in the mortgage industry, but just tech across the board. And then armed with that knowledge, just really committing and saying, I have to, right? If I'm going to start this, I have to get to the peak, or I'm just not going to start it, right?
Yeah.
Because then, you need to avoid that negative feedback cycle. I don't know if you see that with some of the people, you work with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I definitely see it constantly where, people are frustrated with themselves, with the tech, if they're in a bad mental space, they are blaming, anyone but themselves.
Sure.
And yeah, it is tough. And it's like, that's a great example. It's like, you go forward, but then you didn't make it to the peak and you're rolling right back, right?
You're rolling right back. Yeah.
And and I think like, it's kind of just one of those things I find, like, if you spend like the first 30 minutes on a task, like a project task, like you're just building up, right? And you need to get like a solid, I would say, put away a solid 5 to 6 hours to just do it, because once you get into that first hour, you just start rolling in the actual task.
Totally.
And to start it for 6 hours or 3 hours and then wait a whole nother week to go back to it, it's just, don't even start it, don't even sign up until you have the time to just batch it and get as much of it done to a point where you can actually use it, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, it's an interesting point, and I think it's something that for me as people in the tech space we can work on, because I look at, we're at a conference right now, we're in Whistler, and people are taking 3 days and 8 hours a day. People probably work more than 8 hours. They're taking 30 hours out of their time, let's call it, to go and to educate themselves, because they understand that the 30 hours I'm going to spend on this education, on this networking, is going to give me 30 hours and some down the road.
yeah.
I don't think that exists for tech. I don't know anyone, and maybe this isn't necessarily the right thing, who says, I'm going to buy a CRM, or I'm going to go sign up for Velocity, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to lock myself in a room for 3 straight days. I'm going to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it means and they're paying a lot of money to come to these conferences.
Yeah.
And we're just asking you to take the time out of your day or weekend to just do the tasks, right? And just get it done. So that's a very good point. Okay. Wrapping up, advice or takeaways for brokers. Like, if a broker's just starting to explore new tech, where should they begin?
Yeah, where should they begin? I think, it kind of goes back to, what we were just talking about, which is, what's your biggest pain point, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, it's not going to be a one size fits all for everybody. I think, we talked about today, I think a lot of Again, maybe I'll wear the CRM filter a little bit, which is, okay, if you've been doing this for 20 years, maybe your biggest pain point is just stay in touch with those clients, right? Just start there, find that biggest pain, I guess maybe just pay attention, right? And go through your day and say, what were the highs and what were the lows? And you can find a lot of value maybe in those lows of saying, well, crap, I just lost that client to RBC, but maybe that's on me because I didn't talk to them for 3 years, right? So start paying attention to that. And then if you're on, a new broker side, you don't have this massive book of business. It's about generating leads. It's saying, okay, well, where's my pain? It's just getting in front of a realtor. Okay, how do I get in front of realtors? I need to start providing value. How do I start providing value? Maybe it's marketing. Maybe it's just getting in front of their face. So yeah, I think it's very specific. It's maybe a wishy-washy answer to wrap things up, but I think it's totally specific, right? It's start taking a look at what's my day-to-day look like and where is there room for improvement.
Right? I mean, I could add to that. I'm a big believer in time tracking for certain points of the year. I've talked about this previously. We time track for 3 weeks consecutively. Every half an hour we track what we did, write it down.
So cool.
Do it for 3 weeks and then revisit it at the end. And what
do you find? What do you find in that?
I find I almost always find a lot of stuff I'll never do again.
Yeah, I know.
and
like what though? Like I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot, but
like right now, I mean, in the last 2 years, my role's changed quite a bit. But I've definitely found like the one thing I do far too much is following up for certain items when it comes to our business and things that. Actually take quite a bit of time, or back and forth exchanges when it comes to sign up onboarding type processes that I can't maybe automate, but I can certainly hire somebody to do for a lot cheaper rate.
Cool.
And the biggest thing you got to look at is like, maybe it's not in the budget to hire that person, but is it in the budget for you to spend like your time on that, where your time could be spent on a higher, rate of return, right? So that's a big one. But that is how we built our process in our CRM for the Thrive business 9 years ago.
Just look
we built the process
minutes,
first. And figured out, I shouldn't be following up for documents. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that.
I just spent 2 hours doing that.
Yeah.
Why? Is that value add?
And then it started to build out roles for people to hire that we, ended up going, and it made a big difference. So I guess the last piece is just any final insights or resources for brokers looking to stay ahead in the tech game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's specific resources. I think that it's, I think that the superpower that brokers have versus let's say the banks and, partners, but also competitors with the bank. So not saying anything about that, but what the broker channel has, I think that the banks don't, is that ability to just try things out and iterate very quickly, right? Like we talked about, today, some of these, hey, I just want to use a tool that allows me to summarize something very quick or doing something like that. Like just go out and do it, right? Like just actually start trying these things, because at the very least, you're going to get smarter with it. And if you compare yourself to a bank, for them to use that type of tool or that process, it's 6 months and a steering committee and 5 approvals and this and that. So just gain that knowledge right now, stay curious. And then the other side of it is, I think another superpower of brokers is just the network side of things. Right. So you're trying a bunch of stuff, but so is the next person. And so is the next person. The more you can share that knowledge, it's just going to accelerate everything as, that tech curve really starts to accelerate. The knowledge of how to use that tech is going to be so valuable.
Agreed. Right? I'll add a couple pieces. One, I mean, we talked about a mastermind. We're looking to figure out this AI space better. Well, find a couple brokers in your brokerage or your network that are all at a similar spot that are trying to get better and have the same goals.
Yeah, exactly.
And just that's one area. Two, I mean, you have a great tech podcast, and I would highly recommend that. Maybe you can plug that for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, that one's, you've been out. It's a good little segment we do every week. Basically, we're looking at what are the big trends in the market. We're bringing in tech leaders, folks like yourself who are thinking about this stuff all day, every day. And we're just having a conversation. Right, it's just like this, pretty much, of saying, "What are you seeing?" And honestly, I guess just drinking my own medicine, so to speak. Which is a lot of these podcasts, I end up just learning a lot, right? Yeah. And that's what's exciting for me, and I hope the audience does too, and I think they do. Which is, it's just a conversation. It's an honest conversation of what people are seeing, and a lot of cool stuff comes out of it. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll link anything to do with your social, your podcast, Blu Mortgage, everything will be linked in the show. It was great, man. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to just more of this and more innovation. That's
going to come at us quick, eh?
Yeah.
No, this is great. Thank you.
That's a wrap. So thank you for listening, and on to the next. Thank you for tuning in. If you found value in this show, please subscribe to our channel on your preferred platform. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Your support is incredibly appreciated. We also welcome your reviews and feedback, which are crucial in helping us deliver outstanding educational content. Feel free to share your thoughts. A 5-star review would be fantastic if you think we earned it. Lastly, a vital announcement about Backpack Buddies, our chosen charity for 2025. This remarkable organization addresses a hidden hunger issue many are unaware of in British Columbia. While school districts provide meals during school hours, numerous children face food scarcity at home, particularly during the weekends. Backpack Buddies steps in to support these vulnerable children, ensuring they have easy-to-prepare, familiar food for weekends. This is achieved through collaborations with schools and an extensive distribution network. Your contribution can make a significant difference. With just $20, you can give a child in need a food bag from Backpack Buddies filled with enough meals and snacks to sustain them over the weekend and more. Once again, thank you for listening, and see you on the next one.